Select your name from the list and click the Login button. If you don't see your name in the list, type your name in the box and then click the Login button. Click the Exit button to quit the program. Select your name from the list and click the Login button. If you don't see your name in the list, type your name in the box and then click the Login button. Click the Exit button to quit the program. Move your mouse over the menu item you want, and then click the item to select it. Make up your own funny story. Click on a blank in the story, and you'll see a list of action words at the top of the screen. Click on the action word you want to fill in each blank. You can change your mind and select a different word to make a different story. Use as many different action words as you can. Click blanks or click blank. Click blanks or Make up your own funny story. Put the sentences in order that makes sense to you. Way to go! Put the sentences in order that makes sense to you. Good job! Put the sentences in order that makes sense to you. I don't think so. Fantastic! Put the sentences in order that makes sense to you. Wow, you did it! Put the sentences in order that makes sense to you. Fantastic! Put the sentences in order that makes sense to you. Wow, you did it! Put the sentences in order that makes sense to you. Good job! Put the sentences in order that makes sense to you. Way to go! Put the sentences in order that makes sense to you. Good job! Put the sentences in order that makes sense to you. No way! Fantastic! In this activity, you'll see a story that is missing its beginning. There will be a number of possible beginnings beneath the story. You have to pick the sentence that begins the story. Click and drag a sentence from the list below the story to pick the best beginning for the story. Wow, you did it! Good job! Way to go! No way! Fantastic! Good job! In this activity, you'll be able to write stories by choosing which way your story turns out. Click a blank in the story. Click on the word or words you want to fill in each blank. When you're done, you can read your story. You can even go back and change some of your choices to make a new story. Then go on to a completely new story. Every paragraph has a main idea. In this activity, you'll have to figure out what it is. Read each paragraph. Then pick the sentence that best summarizes the main idea of that paragraph. Click the Evaluate button to see if you are correct. Each problem in this activity is a sentence, but the words in each sentence are scrambled. You must put the words together again to make the sentence.
Fantastic! Wow, you did it!
Way to go! Good job! Good job!
No way! Wow, you did it! Way to go! Way to go!
Each problem in this activity There are several ways to describe a person. Some words describe how the person looks. Others can describe how a person is feeling. Still more can describe a person's work or hobbies. Click the Art button and select a picture of a person. Then, click the Text button to choose 3 words from 3 different categories to describe this person. Do the same again for at least 3 more people. Put each person, both the picture and the words, on a separate page. Make a book with as many pages as you want. When you're finished, you can print out your character book. Suppose you received a special present. Suppose you received
It was spring in the mountains when Mama married Mr. Long. All over North Georgia, dogwoods were bursting into bloom, and mockingbirds were courting and mating and feuding over nesting places. They weren't the only ones fussing. Me and my brothers and sisters were fighting the children of the widower who was trying to take our father's place. At the preacher's house that day, we stood in 2 scowling lines. Mr. Long's 7 in their best overalls and hand-me-down dresses, and the 5 of us Circes in our mended city clothes. Larry Ray, Hattie, Bonnie, me, and Robert eyed them across the preacher's yard. They made faces. We made faces back. I was the one Mama caught. "Mandy," she said. Mama was all decked out in her best dress and Sunday hat with new ribbons to hide the frayed spots and a bunch of fresh flowers to cover a hole. Her eyes were smiling. Mr. Long wore his brother's suit. It was too short and smelled like mothballs. And as he swatted at several honeybees circling Mama's hat, a seam ripped. The preacher and his wife inspected us all, and then looked at Mr. Long's wagon tied to a post of the well house. It was piled high with Long and Circe belongings. The preacher cleared his throat and opened his Bible. "We are gathered together," he began in his church voice. "Wait," said Mama, grabbing at my baby brother, Larry Ray, who had just thrown himself on top of Mr. Long's next to the youngest boy, Earl. The 2 of them were tumbling over and over in the dirt and had rolled under the porch, where they knocked into a big yellow tomcat. The cat hissed, and a hound dog on the porch growled in reply. A cluster of chickens in the yard clucked in alarm. More honeybees arrived while Mama and Mr. Long dusted off Larry, Ray, and Earl and lined us all up again. Bees whizzed around the wagon, and Mr. Long's mules backed up in their traces until the narrow post they were tied to strained and trembled. "Is everybody ready for the wedding?" the preacher asked. "No," answered all of us children together. That's one thing we agreed on. But Mama and Mr. Long both said yes, so the preacher hunted for his place in the Bible. The yellow cat crawled from beneath the porch and padded his way across the yard with his tail erect. "We are gathered together," the preacher began, just as a new cloud of honeybees came flying over the roof of the house and onto the porch. Suddenly the dog sprang to life. "Yip, yip, 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 yip!" He howled, leaping from the porch in a swarm of bees and racing across the yard. The chickens squawked and scattered, flapping in every direction. Claws spread, the rooster flew at the cat. Hissed the cat, making for the wagon in a yellow streak. He skidded on the wagon seat, sweeping off 2 hens before clawing his way over the mattress to the top of a wardrobe. All of us children whooped with laughter. Suddenly the mules lunged backwards in the traces. The post snapped and the well house crashed to the ground. The mules raced around the yard, spilling a box, a ladder-back chair, and 2 bags out of the wagon before galloping off up the road, trailing a plume of dust. Nobody was laughing now. "Whoa!" bellowed Mr. Long, running after the wagon. "My furniture!" cried Mama. She hitched up her skirt and let out too. All us young'uns joined the chase, and the preacher huffed and puffed along behind. "Stop!" he yelled, waving his Bible in the air. "What about the wedding?" Nobody answered, and nobody stopped. We ran past woods and pastures and newly furrowed fields, gathering up a trail of Long and Circe belongings as we went. Hattie scooped up our checkerboard and their dipper. Robert picked up our bedsheet and their clock. The Longs grabbed up our tablecloth and their water bucket, our books and their lantern. I ran back to get the youngest Long, Mary Lucy, who had stumbled and skinned her knee. She put her dusty little hand in mine, and we ran on together. By the time we got to the creek, where the mules had finally stopped, we were all mixed and mingled into one big dirty group. Mr. Long's young'uns looked at us Circes and then at one another, and all of us began to laugh. The preacher arrived as Mr. Long tied the mules to a tree near the edge of the creek. "Are we ready for the wedding?" he panted. "Yes," said all us children. "Yes," said Mama. "We are finally gathered together." And we were. It was spring. More honeybees arrived while Mom. We are all nobody belonged by the preacher. Yes.
Move your cursor over the certificate to see which activities you haven't completed.
In a small town there lived a baker. The baker made all kinds of breads in all kinds of shapes. He made long bread, round bread, thin bread, and big bread. small town there lived a baker. The baker made all kinds of breads in all kinds of shapes. He made long bread, round bread, thin bread, and big bread. But all his breads were very good. The baker had 4 children, Bob and Bill, Bonnie, and baby Beth. Everybody called them the baker's bunch. They wanted to be good bread makers, too. "Let's make some bread," said Bob. And they did. First they washed their hands. Then they cleaned the table. Bob and Bill found the spoons, cups, and bowls. Bonnie took out the flour, sugar, salt, butter, and water. Baby Beth wanted to help too, but she was small. All she could do was watch. "Get the yeast," said Bob. "What does yeast do?" asked baby Beth. "It makes the dough rise," said Bonnie, "so the bread has a nice big shape." Bob put some flour, sugar, and salt in a large bowl. He mixed. Bill put in the yeast. Then he mixed. Bonnie added water and butter. Then she mixed. Bob added more flour, and he mixed and mixed. Baby Beth watched and watched. Bob pushed and pulled and turned the dough. Then he pushed and pulled and turned the dough again. "Why are you fighting with the dough?" asked baby Beth. Bob laughed. "I'm not fighting with the dough. Dough has to be kneaded." "I like to be kneaded too," said baby Beth. Bonnie put the dough in a bowl. She covered it and put it aside. Baby Beth looked at the bread. It looked small in the bowl. "Bob said the bread needed something," thought baby Beth. "I know what it needs." So baby Beth added something to the dough. The children left the bread so it could rise, and it did. It grew bigger, bigger, and bigger. "Quick, let's do something," said Bob, catching some dough in a dish. They filled small bowls and big bowls. They filled small pans and big pans. Still the dough grew and grew. The children filled every dish they could find. Baby Beth laughed and laughed. "Look at all the dough! Whoopee!" Bonnie did not laugh. "What will we do with all this dough?" "Let's take it to Dad," said Bob. So Bill and Bob, Bonnie and baby Beth took all the bowls and pans filled with dough to their dad, the baker. "Our bread grew and grew," said Bob. "We did everything right." "Our bread had everything it needed," said Bonnie. "No, it did not," said baby Beth. "You said the dough needed something, so I put in more yeast." The baker's bunch laughed and laughed. "Oh, no," said Bob. "Baby Beth thought needed was the same as needed. She added more yeast." "That's why the bread grew and grew," said Bonnie. "Now what do we do?" Their dad knew. He baked a loaf of bread so long and so big it could feed the whole town. And that's what the baker's bunch decided to do. They made a sign that said, "Come have lunch with the baker's bunch." Everyone in town came. They brought meats, cheeses, lettuce, tomatoes, and lots of other good things to make a big, big sandwich. Everybody said it was the best sandwich ever. Baby Beth just ate bread. "It doesn't need anything," she said, smiling.
Once upon a time, in a small village, a poor, unfortunate man lived with his mother, his wife, and his 6 children in a little one-room hut. Because they were so crowded, the man and his wife often argued. The children were noisy, and they fought. In winter, when the nights were long and the days were cold, life was especially hard. The hut was full of crying and quarreling. One day, when the poor, unfortunate man couldn't stand it any more, he ran to the rabbi for advice. "Holy Rabbi," he cried, "things are in a bad way with me, and getting worse. We are so poor that my mother, my wife, my 6 children, and I all live together in one small hut. We are too crowded, and there's so much noise. Help me, Rabbi. I'll do whatever you say." The rabbi thought and pulled on his beard. At last he said, "Tell me, my poor man, do you have any animals, perhaps a chicken or 2? "Yes," said the man, "I do have a few chickens, also a rooster and a goose." "Ah, fine," said the rabbi. "Now go home and take the chickens, the rooster, and the goose into your hut to live with you." "Yes, indeed, Rabbi," said the man, though he was a bit surprised. The poor unfortunate man hurried home and took the chickens, the rooster, and the goose out of the shed and into his little hut. When some days or a week had gone by, life in the hut was worse than before. Now with the quarreling and crying, there was honking, crowing, and clucking. There were feathers in the soup. The hut stayed just as small, and the children grew bigger. When the poor unfortunate man couldn't stand it any longer, he again ran to the rabbi for help. "Holy Rabbi," he cried, "see what a misfortune has befallen me. Now with the crying and quarreling, with the honking, clucking, and crowing, there are feathers in the soup. Rabbi, it couldn't be worse. Help me, please." The rabbi listened and thought. At last he said, "Tell me, do you happen to have a goat?" "Oh yes, I do have an old goat, but he's not worth much." "Excellent," said the rabbi. "Now go home and take the old goat into your hut to live with you." "Ah, no! Do you really mean it, Rabbi?" cried the man. "Come, come now, my good man, and do as I say at once," said the rabbi. The poor unfortunate man tramped back home with his head hanging down and took the old goat into his hut. When some days or a week had gone by, life in the little hut was much worse. Now with the crying, quarreling, clucking, honking, and crowing, the goat went wild, pushing and butting everyone with his horns. The hut seemed smaller, the children grew bigger. When the poor unfortunate man couldn't stand it another minute, he again ran to the rabbi. "Holy Rabbi, help me," he screamed. "Now the goat is running wild. My life is a nightmare." The rabbi listened and thought. At last he said, "Tell me, my poor man, is it possible that you have a cow? Young or old, doesn't matter." "Yes, Rabbi, it's true I have a cow," said the poor man fearfully. "Go home then," said the rabbi, "and take the cow into your hut." "Oh no, surely not, Rabbi," cried the man. "Do it at once," said the rabbi. The poor unfortunate man trudged home with a heavy heart and took the cow into his hut. "Is the rabbi crazy?" he thought. When some days or a week had gone by, life in the hut was very much worse than before. Everyone quarreled, even the chickens. The goat ran wild. The cow trampled everything. The poor man could hardly believe his misfortune. At last, when he could stand it no longer, he ran to the rabbi for help. "Holy Rabbi," he shrieked, "help me, save me. The end of the world has come. The cow is trampling everything. There's no room even to breathe. It's worse than a nightmare." The rabbi listened and thought. At last he said, "Go home now, my poor unfortunate man, and let the animals out of your hut." I will, I'll do it right away," said the man. The poor unfortunate man hurried home and let the cow, the goat, the chickens, the goose, and the rooster out of his little hut. That night the poor man and all his family slept peacefully. There was no crowing, no clucking, no honking. There was plenty of room to breathe. The very next day, The poor man ran back to the rabbi. "Holy Rabbi," he cried, "you have made life sweet for me. With just my family in the hut, it's so quiet, so roomy, so peaceful. What a pleasure!"
When animals When animals shop at the animal, they often buy things they don't need at all. Clothing and gadgets in bright colored hues, gewgaws and doodads they just can't refuse, like anteater aprons too small to catch messes. Or bonnets for bison to cover their tresses. Cows crowd a counter where skateboards are sold. Donkeys don sunsuits to wear when it's cold. Sales on eyeglasses cause an elephant stampede. And frogs become frantic to purchase birdseed. Gophers buy garters, but not any stockings. Hens snatch up hankies with manners quite shocking. Some icky iguanas get ill drinking tea. While lunching with jackals who thought it was free. Kangaroos clamor for drop-seat pajamas. Bargains on lipstick excite several llamas. Millions of monkeys mob miniskirt sales. And knock over nanny goats purchasing veils. An ostrich and peacock with plumage so pretty buy new woolen jackets to wear to the city. A quail quickly orders a case of quince jelly. A rhino wants ribbons to wear round her belly. A snake buys suspenders for 2 pairs of pants. Two turtles buy tutus to wear to a dance. Univalve uniforms seem awfully silly. A velvet-clad vixen remarked rather shrilly. Why would a whale want a wig of blonde curls? Or an ox a tiara of onyx and pearls? Yaks yell for knapsacks in bright polka dots. And zebras trade stripes for a jar full of spots. Now you may giggle and think this is funny. But what did you do with your birthday money? Did you buy a balloon that floated away? Or a whole bag of candy you ate in a day? Next time you have money, think carefully how those animals bought doodads they can't use now. It's your money, you own it, so do what you like. But don't cry if it's spent instead of saved for a bike.
Move your mouth.